And welcome back to the Part-Time Otaku Podcast. My name is Grant.
My name is Dave.
If this is your first time listening, this season we are covering My Hero Academia, specifically Season 5. Today's episode is episode 23. We are an anime-only podcast, so we have no insight into future spoilers in the manga or anything like that, so you don't need to worry about any of that good stuff. Before we jump right in, we want to give a shout-out to... I'm going to take a swing at this, Dave. I'm guessing it's ____ -X on Reddit for the Aizo thumbnail this week.
Yeah, I think he pronounces it let us know if we got the pronunciation right, but I'm pretty sure it's
But thank you regardless. Awesome fan art. The gentleman did not want, or he or she did not want to, just said the Reddit profile, so we're going with that. So, but
it's on,
-X.
They painted it on glass, which is pretty cool. That's not a digital drawing. They actually painted that on glass. So.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, pretty cool thumbnail, and I think they said it was from their favorite moment of the season when Aizo had the tears when they were interrogating what's his face. So
Good episode, yeah.
Solid one this week.
Right on. Well, thank you very much for that. So we'll jump right into the synopsis. So, memories from Shigaraki's past as Tenko Shimura resurface as he confronts Destro.
Is this the penultimate
Yes.
episode? Is the finale next week?
I believe it is.
It might be 2 left. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2.
Because My Hero's not the typical just 24. Like, it's done 25.
Yeah,
I think.
But we don't know. We don't know for sure. I know next week is like Tokyo Revengers finale, but I don't know if they said that about My Hero. Anyway, it feels like we are racing towards a conclusion.
Breakneck speed for sure.
In this arc, yeah. This is one of the first episodes, and this is weird to say, but this is, I think, maybe the first episode in the history of the podcast that we've actually watched together in a room.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun.
Unfortunately, I had already seen it.
Yeah,
but to sit down regardless and sit down with you, it was a lot. It's not like I had not seen it. I watched it that morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty good episode. I had some fun with this one. I think we've talked a lot about, just backstories and flashbacks and like giving a character their due. Obviously, Tomura Shigaraki has been due. I realized this the other day. He's introduced in episode, I think, 10 of season 1.
Oh, no kidding.
So he's an incredibly original character.
Big time, yeah.
And it's taken the better part of 5 seasons to get his backstory. And I think it was worth the wait. I think this is a really good episode, and it was really, really well done.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like it happened sooner than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Even though with the ending of last episode, it kind of seemed obvious that it was going to fall up into this, but you would think this would be the finale, right? We get all this big reveal moment, and it's just because just the way the season has presented itself, it's kind of been all over the place and this and that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they left us on the way this episode ended, if they just dropped that as a finale, and we didn't see anything for a year or a year and a half. But
that'd be super irritating.
but I feel like the way the moment reveals itself, that would be a good way to cap it off. Or even if it was a 2-part season kind of thing, maybe if they had split it up, it would have been better. But
I agree. I would have just been irritated if they didn't give us a conclusion to this particular conflict. You're right that
if it was outside,
if
it was outside all the meta liberation stuff, I think they could have done that.
Yeah, but you're right. I agree that the reveal of his origin story is strong enough on its own that could be a finale, if it wasn't taking place inside this conflict. So yeah, I guess we should jump into the episode. So
yeah, there's a lot to cover.
There is. It's pretty action packed, but then we spend a lot of time on some different moments. So I have a feeling we might breeze through it, but. The episode starts, it picks immediately off of last week's episode with Twice rescuing Toga. So she's all bloodied up and unconscious, and it's Twice arguing with a bunch of himself, a bunch of his own copies. And it's a good thing they gave us that refresher last week about how his quirk works.
Sure.
Because they're saying we need to measure her, and then they clone her, but they clone the beat up version of her. But they do say, like, oh, we should give her a transfusion of her own blood from the copy.
Which is super cool.
I was like, oh, right. That's pretty interesting. Like, I guess you could theoretically always save someone that way. Though that might be tricky if you can only copy the hurt version of a person.
Sure. That is true. All I can think of too in this moment, especially like, I've rewatched it again since, is like what if Twice had been a hero? Like he could have been working in tandem with I'm blanking on her name, the older hero she heals. Is it it's not nurse something, or it's doctor something, Dr. Heal, or
it's not the nurse that, like, are you talking about the nurse at the
she'll
school?
like kiss kiss him on the head. Yeah. Can you imagine like if he was like a
run their own little shop?
Well, that was the thing. Like, if he was like a good guy, and he would probably potentially, it could have been a route for him to get into like a medical field and all that. It was just like a what if,
Imagine that. My Hero Academia presents What If.
That would be
For
cool.
episode 1, what if Tomura Shigaraki's parents didn't abuse him?
The ultimate villains.
Yeah. So after this, we get some confirmation of some fun little theories we had last week. Spinner, or Gecko guy, is trying to support Shigaraki and the rest of the league, but he runs into the politician, and they confirm kind of the guess we had last week, which was his literal quirk is inciting crowds of people, which is pretty funny.
Very meta. Funny.
Very meta.
Very meta.
Very meta of the Meta Liberation Army. He engages them, but he gets more or less the crap beat out of him. Like, he doesn't really have many moments in this, unless I'm like forgetting something. He kind of, I think they say that, like, oh, all you can really do is stick to walls, huh?
Yeah, they kind of throwing some shade at him. But that's the thing. He kind of takes, like, he doesn't take like a major loss here, because he kind of has his moment where he screams out and he shows he's a part of the team. We eventually get some kind of a little bit of backstory on him, but by the end of the episode, all I can think is like, raw deal for Gecko.
He kind of took a bit of an L, unless he gets like an upgrade.
Oh, I hope so. That would be so lame if by the end of it he was like just one person didn't get one after they've all been working towards it. So
yeah. We do see in the distance, as he's engaging all these people, we see the explosion at the tower, like sort of a nod to the last episode where Shigaraki collapsed the whole tower. Then we get into the fight with Redestro. So Tomura confronts Redestro. They start fighting. Doesn't look good for our boy, though.
No.
He's not really our boy, other than through this arc. It's kind of weird, eh? Like,
he's the leading man in the arc. Let's say that.
He's the leading man of the arc. And I think he's quickly gaining a lot of sympathy from the audience. They're doing a good job of putting us kind of on Team Shigaraki right now. If you had to pick a side, you'd probably pick the League of Villains, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, these Meta Liberation guys are just like a bunch of punks. They seem like I don't know. It seems so weird. They seem like whiny incels to me. Like they seem like just like douchebags of the internet who have no real world experience.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like hiding away, and they're not getting what they want. They have to follow the rules.
We all met on 4chan and we're really upset. No, I'm sorry. Take it easy, 4chan. Don't come after me. So he explains his quirk. He's like, all right, now that we're fighting, allow me to monologue.
Man, this Redestro guy might be the king of monologuing.
Yeah, 100%. And but he explains his quirk, which we kind of needed, to be fair. And his quirk is stress. So Redestro.
It's hard not to laugh.
Yeah, Redestro is more or less the embodiment of everybody trying to enter the real estate market everywhere in 2021.
Sad truth.
I just get so strong when I think about these rising prices. Anyway, but yeah, he literally, his stress makes him stronger, so he stores it up, and then it makes him all big and purple. Very weird quirk, like you said.
But Dave, he's been channeling his stress from a very young age. No one can come close to his power. Like, this smugness and the freaking hubris on this guy is like, it's unreal. It's so like Bond villain campy. I love it.
Well, he is, as we'll learn later, he's not the only one with the secret anime trope and trump card of having a troubled childhood, which is like the ultimate superpower in anime.
Seriously.
But anyway, he does kind of beats on Tomura a little bit. It doesn't look too bad, but Tomura has this moment where previously he needs all 5 of his fingers to make contact with an enemy or an object in order for his quirk to work. Say that 5 times fast. His quirk to work. And
I honestly didn't. I don't remember that detail.
yeah, I think they mention it or stress. The fucking guy with the stress. Redestro mentions it. He's like, "Oh, I thought only you had to have all 5 fingers."
But was that the detail we had before?
Yeah, I think last week, or is it this week? I can't remember. I swear it's mentioned. So his quirk works with only 2 fingers on Redestro, who kind of lets him go out of surprise. And then we get like our first of many flashback sequences where it's a young boy Shigaraki. He's not Tomura yet. He's Tenko. And he's being approached by One For All, and he's talking about, hey, these hands that belong to your family. He mentions his grandparents, which I don't think we knew. But he says, like, yeah, these ones are your grandparents, these ones are your parents, this one's your sister. And it's him who says, you should keep these with you at all times because you want to remember how you feel.
Yeah, never let that feeling go.
Yeah, pretty dark. I mean...
Super, super dark.
Pretty, like, villainous, and, like, you could tell Redestro... I don't want to use this word in the wrong tense, or in the wrong context, or not Redestro, but One For All is kind of grooming Shigaraki here to be like, yeah, this thing that is really disturbing you, you should keep a reminder about it at all times and channel those crazy feelings of guilt and shame and remorse and
super villain
destruction. Shit. Yeah, super villain shit. So yeah, we get a quick one about that, and then Shigaraki comes back and he's sort of bleeding and saying it feels like his head is kind of splitting in 2. At this point in the episode, Grant, did you think we were gonna get like the rest of the episode was gonna be fight oriented, or did you think it was gonna be like an origin story in the second half? Because I was like, where the hell is this going?
Well, the origin story, obviously, like, it goes to that, but that completely caught me off guard. I thought it was just going to be Redestro and Shigaraki just, like, slamming on each other for, like, the remainder of the episode. I really thought that's what it was, because we've been kind of missing that. But, yeah, like, it's... Also, too, like, it's weird, because Redestro has these moments... Like, he's a good villain. Like, he's... I think he's... his role is needed, like in this context and all that, in this arc and whatnot. But he does have these very potent lines when I think his best moments, honestly, dialogue-wise, is when he underestimates the League of Villains. And he's kind of like, oh, maybe, it started off with, I got the wrong info stuff. And then, when he blasts at him, he's like, oh, like, you've leveled up, haven't you? Or he's awakening, I think is what he says.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so after that, I was like, and then, when it goes from the quick little flashback into this, I was hoping they were just going to throw down the entire time. That's what I was hoping for. It's not what we got. I ended up loving that more, but going into this, what was your take on it? Or where were you thinking the direction it was going?
I thought it was going to be a full-on slugfest.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I also knew, and like we've been talking about for the last few episodes, like this whole season's been pretty flashback central, and
sure.
These are definitely characters that are due, so I wasn't super surprised. I will say one thing that surprised me, even though you had mentioned, I think in like a little teaser that you told me about, because you saw this before I did originally. They're like, yeah, this is bloody, and it was already getting bloody here, because his hand is all messed up, and there's blood all over Tomura's face, and one of his foot is all bloodied up. Or one of his feet is all bloodied up. So I was surprised at the level of violence, especially when you compare it to, what was it, an episode or 2 ago when Toga...
The Toga stuff, yeah. The beginning of Toga's episode.
I remember we said on the podcast that week, like, oh, this is kind of dark. This is kind of bloody. The people falling out of the sky, the very quick flash of blood. It's like, that's probably as much as they want to do, because they don't want to glorify it too much or whatever. I thought about it a bit. And I was like, well, there's blood in the One For All Might fight, or the All For One All Might fight, and like there's been blood in the past, but this was different.
This was very much different. This was a one-sided situation. This wasn't too, this wasn't a hero and a villain clashing, and like blood is being shown as one side losing over the other. This is like all out viscera.
Yeah.
They're trying to harm one another, whereas during the One for All and All Might fight, that was a good versus evil. Like, yeah, there was blood, but one side was not trying to go all out, not trying to go for like a kill shot kind of thing, if you know what I mean. Like, so it's just completely different scenario. Like, the rules are completely different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So this is more or less where round 2 starts. Tomura engages. I figured this was gonna come up, that he's like super fast or something like that. Like, I think this is where Ray Destro says something about him leveled up or having a bit of an awakening, and the cause and effect here is pretty obvious, right? We got that big explainer a few episodes back about all the training he did with Gigantomachia. Well, not intentional training, but
sure.
That long, prolonged conflict. He was kind of due for a couple of upgrades, and it feels like they did him a favor here. Overhaul, or I have overhaul written in my notes because Redestro turns into like, he puts on his like, this is my final form moment.
Yeah.
He turns into Frieza form too, where he just like gets bigger and really, really dark and big. And I was thinking to myself, he almost looks like Overhaul. Then he uses.
There was definitely, especially the beak, because the guy has pretty sharp looking nose, but then when he kind of, that shell surrounds him there, looks like oil. But
I figured that's maybe why they gave him such a ridiculously prominent nose. I was like, does this like maybe make him look more evil at some point? And like in this moment,
point, I think
his whole face looks like a bird. Like the nose, like characters have big noses, but his nose is so prominently ridiculous. Like it doesn't scale, but it works in this scary final form.
Does Redestro's power as a whole work for you? Like just like the getting larger, and then like the shell that surrounds him, and then like he eventually has like an ultimate attack later. Like
he has it right now. It's the next thing. It's called a burden. No, like the answer is no.
Yeah, it's a little inconsistent, I find.
Well, I like the idea of I store up stress.
Yeah.
And it makes me stronger. Sure, it's just like, but then you just become like a half dinosaur and you're shooting energy balls, and that's all like somehow part of your stress storing mechanism. Like, I'll always applaud the show for the levels of creativity that they consistently have coming up with quirks. But like when you turn things into like, oh, this quirk has this origin but it manifests in like 30 different ways, it's like, again, sometimes it works, but in this case it didn't really for me. He was saying like burden, that ultimate move was like an embodiment of all of his stress. I was like, well,
like as if no one could survive this in the way, like it's just like
okay, I guess that makes sense. But in the moment I was like, okay, I guess let's just keep going.
Yeah, it's like, where's this coming from? I feel like I would have bought it a little more if it got to a point where he just like lost control. He'd been holding on for the stress for so long, and it backfired on him, and then he turns into this big hulking thing and looks like a demon dinosaur, or like what have you. Like, I
like that. Maybe we'll get there, but like I like the idea. I like the idea that like he's really like chill and like sanguine and really in control most of the time, but then when he uses his stress,
it just
like
flows
it affects
out of him,
it affects his temperament and his decision making, and like maybe he becomes literally stressed and frustrated, but he's very powerful in that form. I don't know. I thought maybe if it affected him some way, because how does one store stress? That has to have an effect. Anyway, I don't want to dig too deep on it. I don't know if quirks are meant to be like really like gone over with a fine-toothed comb in that regard, but like you said, you asked me and I was like, well, not really. Okay, so he uses his little ultimate ability on Shigaraki, who survives it and damages him in the process, and then I'm just trying to figure out where the hell we are at this point. He uses his ability.
Well, he kind of more or less dodges Burden, or he times or Burden is timed at the same time. Shigaraki defends himself and times it correctly with Burden.
Yeah,
and then it kind of kicks into his one of his best lines, forever is, "I just want to destroy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right before he says that line, Mr. Skeptic calls Redestro to warn them that Gigantomachia has arrived.
Oh, yes.
That was what I was thinking about. So, yeah, Gigantomachia arrives, and he's tearing up the Liberation Army, so, like, right on time, or kind of about time. And then we kick into, back into flashback here.
The juice of the episode.
The juice. Yeah, this is the business, and I don't know if we go over it line by line. We can kind of get into some of the highlights here.
I will say I find it repeats itself in parts, but I think that's a byproduct of them really wanting to hit home just how raw of a deal he had. And like I said, it's all effective, but there is points where they're kind of, it's not quite beating you over the head, but it's getting there. Like they reiterate. But I think that's the character. It's just there's a lot of that's the thing. There's a lot of mental health at play. There's a lot of I think just projection incarnate. It's
projection, solitude, just child abuse, quite literally at points.
Yeah.
It answers the really big question that I think a lot of people have, and we will discuss it. But it answers the obvious question that I've always had. Once it became clear that Shigaraki was a descendant of the previous One for All holder, it was like, well, how the hell does that happen?
Yeah.
Like the biggest hero of the time, how does someone in their family who, very closely related, like a grandmother, how does that spawn this villain who's out there murdering people at such a young age? And we find out it's child abandonment, right? So this kind of thing kind of trickles down. Like we were saying, like the superpower of all anime is parental issues, but
it's unfortunate, but it's a recurring theme.
I mean, I think it's a recurring theme in anime, and it's a recurring theme in entertainment and in art. But I mean, I think it all comes from a pretty real place, right? I mean,
absolutely.
None of that is a far cry for me. None of that is that big of a stretch. I think Tomura's father was abandoned by his mother. We learn that in this flashback,
which I found super surprising.
So, hey, I gotta say, it worked for me though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Surprising because it's like, well, yeah, she has like the strongest quirk on the planet. Like, she's not here to play mom or play house. You know what I mean? Like, she probably has to do a lot.
Yeah, but like also like owe up to like the, whether it's not going to call it a mistake, but like maybe live up to this new challenge in your life, and maybe don't abandon, but like make avenues for it to work for everyone. So it's kind of like shitty on her. And this is also like a good glaring thing. Like, I keeps going back to Stain, who has like a little cameo this episode, which I loved. Stain did make a comeback. If we're making bets, we would have won. But
true that.
Like, it's the glorification of the heroes and their powers, and they're almighty. And yes, they are in the greater scheme. They are doing all this good, but like, it shows that they're not even remotely innocent sometimes.
It absolutely turned her into a three-dimensional character.
Yes.
Right?
But she's been such an unknown for so long, It's...
Yeah. And I gotta say, I disagree with you. I'm very pro-abandonment. I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I agree. Definitely she's not, we get this thing, the way we feel about All Might, right? Especially the way the show frames All Might, especially in season 1 and all that, is that he's like this knight in shining armor who does no wrong. And the way he talks about his mentor, you more or less feel that she's cut from the same cloth, right?
Sure.
And that none of these people have ever done anything wrong. And that's not to say that she knew this kind of thing would happen, but like you said, she bowed out. She abandoned her child, and it seems like he was a successful guy. He just did not want to talk about heroes. And this is kind of where it all stems from, right? Like any kid, Tenko Tomura, I'll refer to him as Tenko for the rest of this, but
sure.
Tenko had a fascination with heroes, as all kids do, in this anime, but also in real life. Had some pretty natural inclinations, and that was like a really taboo subject at home. And it felt like if that kind of stuff got brought up, then abuse followed. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
And what was tough was that they do a good job of mentioning like the family lived with their grandparents because
I think that's part of the culture.
And also They built a big house. The dad built a big house for everybody. And more over on that, though, when he was kind of abused by his father, no one really helped him.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, he really felt rejected. It was like, you can kind of see the argument of him feeling like everybody was complicit.
I think that's the other big villain in this episode. There's rejection and there's abandonment, but I think complacency is one of the runner-ups, because it's like, I understand, like I say understand, but like it's a very complex, and you used the word three-dimensional earlier, and it's perfect, because a home is like a three-dimensional, like there's so many emotions and personalities, and all the stuff is kind of clashing together, and the more people you add, the more and more and more. And like there's probably some guilt on their end too. They're like, oh, why would we stand up to our son or son-in-law, whatever the situation is, like he put this roof over our heads and blah blah blah. And then the mom, I think she's probably like the biggest not villain, but like she was doing her best, but just like the don't cry thing, don't cry, which was really hit home. And like the thing in this episode too, I think I don't want to get too far away from it, is the saddest moment in this whole flashback is when Tenko is crying with his mom, and he's like, why doesn't dad like heroes, and blah blah blah, and he's like, me and my friends, we played heroes today, and he was clearly talking about other lonely kids who no one wants to play with them, and he chose to play with them, and they called him All Might because like he was their hero to them. And I was like, oh my god, I was like, this is breaking my heart. Like,
yep,
yeah, it was. Yeah,
everybody starts out innocent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make a big sweeping statement like that, but he was a kid. You know what I mean? Like he really was.
You don't know any better. All you know is what you know. Can't be helped.
And man, the mom and the whole family, like you said, just complacent, and they weren't contributing or the worst offenders like the dad was, but they sure as hell were not helping.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's where a lot of the strife comes from. Eventually, his sister finds a picture of the dad as a kid, and the grandmother, who was the previous holder of One for All. So they connect the dots. They don't realize, obviously, the significance of that particular quirk.
Sure.
But they do realize that there was a hero in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Their dad quickly finds out. The sister says, oh, it wasn't me, just like a kid thing, right?
He asked for it. That was the other thing too. Like, I hope I saw some stuff online about people like, like she's clearly a kid. People are like, what a bitch. And I'm like, she's a scared little kid. She's living in this house of hell too.
That's what kids do, right? They don't want to be caught. No kid wants to be punished, rightly or wrongly. So they just point the finger. So that's natural. It's a shame that the dad's a fucking monster about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then, the dad comes full circle. He says, listen, it's true, but she left us. You know what I mean? This is what heroes do. They leave their families so that they can go focus on fighting more important, doing more important things. This is bullshit. There's not going to be any of that in this house. Cut to the backyard, and this is pretty much the climax of the whole episode. I'll go through it really quick, and then maybe we can just talk about the whole experience of watching it.
Sure.
Tenko's crying in the backyard. At first he's throwing a ball for his dog. We see the quirk activate. The ball disintegrates a little bit. Then the dog is comforting him, and the quirk activates, disintegrates the dog. Then the sister comes, witnesses that. He's panicked. The anime did such a good job with this. It was such a dark scene, but
the words being stuck in your throat.
The words being stuck in your throat, the panic in the voice actor's voice, all of it worked really well. The sister runs away because she's scared. He grabs her because he's afraid to be alone. He doesn't know what's happening. There she goes. Then his quirk really gets away from him. He disintegrates the ground, which gets his grandparents. Then the mom goes to try and help. He goes to get her, to hug her, to be comforted by his mother. She disintegrates. Then his dad comes out, and it's hard to say what his dad was doing. I don't think his dad was in a rage and trying to beat him. I think his dad was trying to stop him.
That's what I thought as well. Yeah.
His dad was trying to knock him out because I think he might have had the wherewithal to understand what was happening. But to Tenko, he's not going to discern between what his dad's intentions are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really matter to him. He's pretty, he's dialed to 11 in this moment.
The man who is just beating him is attacking him with a stick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what are you going to do?
And then, this is, transformation complete moment where he yells, die, and he disintegrates his father. And, his hair is changing in the whole throughout the whole scene. The expression on his face is changing. And I think he says he feels an absurd pleasure coursing through his body when he touches his father's face. And then they end the episode and he says, "I didn't itch anymore."
Brutal.
Because he had this skin thing going on.
That was the other big thing. We'll get back to kind of unpack all that. But there's a moment early on. It might even be the same scene when he was talking about the kids he was playing with at school. He says, like, why do I only itch at home?
Yeah.
And he's like he's a kid making offhand comments, like, why and it's like that was like, oh, there's abuse going on here. It was just one of those things there. But a lot to unpack.
I mean, it worked for me.
Absolutely.
I think we said it at the top of the episode. I think the animation was beautiful. That close-up frame at the end of his crying face.
That is scary, to say the least.
Yeah, that was scary. Like, I think you said to me when we were watching it in person, you're like, oh, that feels like a manga grab. Like, that was probably a panel in the manga.
It was so detailed. I think the Toga one was also incredibly detailed as well. But the the use of color and the lines and you see every wrinkle on his face and every tear, and just like it was one of the most send it home moments I've seen in the show in a long time. Just is like, this is the transformation, take it in. Yeah. And it was clearly presented to us that way. And again, like you said, super effective. The animation was stellar this whole episode.
Really well done. I was really shocked at the level of gore they went for.
Yes.
But
the dog caught me off guard.
It set a tone, right?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that sorry, that my cat is just being a total brat. It shocked me because I thought the way his quirk works, it would be a convenient way to avoid the gore. Because you just turn people into dust, right? But I think they wanted to impress upon you, no, it's just not quite working yet. He's going to turn them into bloody pieces.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was... And that's the thing, too. I thought, we seen it happen the first time. It was like, oh, man, the dog is dust. And then, it kind of cuts back and pans back, and there's just, a pool of blood and viscera. And you're like, oh, fuck. It was just, one thing after another. It was definitely one of those moments where it was, you couldn't catch your breath. It had, momentary lulls from between,
Yeah.
Because I think the most time we had was from the dog leading to the sister, but from the sister forward, it was relentless the entire time.
I think you knew the minute maybe the dog or the sister went, you're like, oh god, it's going to be the whole family. And we knew with the hands, obviously we knew what was going to happen, but man, really, really, really rough go. Really, really well executed. I think we started this podcast with Attack on Titan, which is the mother of all I don't know, honeypots or whatever you want to call it, of stories that build up these really, really big questions, and they have to be really worth it.
Yeah.
When you do the reveal, and I think that the reveal was good, and the execution and how they did it was really great. This is one of the things that they couldn't get. That they had to get this right. This is vestiges earlier this season. This is, all the stuff around, the Midoriya's quirk. This is from the most important stuff going forward. He is the big bad. This had to be spot on, and they delivered. It's emotional when it needs to be, and it's not. That's the thing. It's not fluid, massive, incredible animation the whole way. It takes its time, and it kind of just. It crests at the top, and it just, when it kicks off, it kicks off. It's just a very, 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 very strong episode. This is probably going to be one of the better episodes when you look back at the whole series, I think, at least at this point. Yeah, and all of a sudden I'm interested much more in the conflict to come, right? Not just between Shigaraki and the Meta Liberation Army, but also just Midoriya, Shigaraki, all those character dynamics, Shigaraki and All for One.
Yeah.
Just to see like where this character ends up, right? Is he savable? If not, and we assume he's the main big bad, how does that go? What happens to him? I think I'm kind of invested in him as a character now. I'd rather see things work out for him than see him just like be another villain to lose. But I feel like there's a lot of things that have to happen for this character before there's a conclusion. So
I've definitely checked out of the Meta Liberation Army at this point. After seeing all this, I was like, oh, this guy's the real deal. I don't care about what all this, the white noise around this.
Yeah, the way this show is going right now, I feel like the Meta Liberation Army is acting as a springboard for Shigaraki and the League of Villains to really come into their own.
Same way Class B was for Class A.
Yeah. That seems to be how we're going.
Yeah. So, but yeah, all in all, great episode.
Yeah, I think that's probably it for this week. So thank you guys so much for listening. Definitely check out the post show, which drops 2 days after these podcasts, if you haven't already. On the post show, we talk about basically everything else that we're watching. You know, right now we're watching Tokyo Revengers, Sunny Boy, Odd Taxi. We do movie reviews, just everything else that's going on. So check that out and support the podcast wherever you like. Follow us on the relevant social media channel. Feel free to like, comment, follow, subscribe, take the appropriate social media action of your choice. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.